Thank you for tuning in to the Natty News Daily podcast. This episode is brought to you in part by our sponsor, Core Nutritionals. You can check out corenutritionals.com for all your supplement needs and use code Natty News Daily at checkout to save 20%. Enjoy the episode.
What's going on, people? Welcome to another episode of Natty News Daily. We've got special guest on, Mr. Aaron Orton, WNBF Pro, show promoter. Been around the block for a little while. How are you, my man?
I'm doing great. How are you guys doing?
Good. Your arm looks really juicy from this angle.
Okay, I'll do that.
The vape popping. No, the one behind.
Yeah, that other arm there. Jeez. For those that maybe don't know who you are, man, give a brief little introduction and rundown of how long you've been around this whole bodybuilding thing.
Yeah, so I've been doing natural bodybuilding for about 18 years. I got out of the Marine Corps and pursued it as soon as I wanted to, focus on something, direction, and went to college for exercise and movement sciences. And after studying nutrition and exercise, I wanted to see what was possible, drug-free, to compete with. And as soon as I did my first show in 2008, shortly after getting out, I was hooked, and I've been competing since. So it's been about 18 years of natural bodybuilding and helping others, and really trying to continue to learn.
Yeah. How have you always been with the WNBF, or have you dabbled elsewhere, or what's your kind of history with federations and stuff?
Yeah, so when I started, there wasn't really any, especially in Oregon, where I'm from, there wasn't really any options besides the NPC. So the first show I did that I found kind of on the gym wall for a poster was an NPC natural show, which is essentially a 2-year drug tested show. And that was about 2 hours away. So I decided to make the commute and compete with that. And I had a great time. They have a great promoter, a lot of great Northwest promoters, regardless federation up here. And I was hooked after that show. And I think I competed with the NPC for about 6 years because that was the only thing I knew existed.
Yeah.
It was 2014 that I found out there was another Fed that did drug testing. And that was at the time the NANBF IFPA. And that was in Seattle. I competed with them in 2014, did rather well, narrowly missing my pro card. And then, long story short, the guy that beat me popped on the urinalysis. And so it was a no shit moment. And so I took some kind of soul search and be like, man, like which shows are actually, drug free? The promoters reached out to me, Kevin and Linda James, and they told me they were going to be switching to the INBF and WNBF. They felt like the testing standards were greater. They wanted to avoid that situation ever occurring again. Mm-hmm. And he did 2 years later and won my pro card in 2016. And I've essentially competed, in natural feds since.
Yeah, right on. I was looking at your profile just to kind of go through some stuff. Have you ever dabbled in powerlifting or anything like that? Because I saw some pretty heavy deadlifts and stuff. So did you go anywhere elsewhere, or has it always been bodybuilding?
There was a phase after I won my pro card where I hired a powerlifting coach and decided to go into that style of lifting for a little bit, just to see. A lot of my favorite physiques were very strong physiques, and if that could benefit myself. And I learned the pros and cons of such and the balancing act. And I have some love for it. I have clients that powerlift. We host our own powerlifting competition here at the gym. And then we also host, bodybuilding shows. So I try to help out, anyone who's interested in those things. And I like to walk the walk before I preach anything. So I wanted to. So.
Okay, cool. So now, how long have you been running the shows?
I put on my first show in 2019 here in Eugene, Oregon. That was the INBF Cecil Phillips Classic, which was named after a gentleman who had passed away the year before, who was actually my first coach. Essentially, he was 80 years old at the time. He was the first personal trainer, gym rat, bodybuilder in this area, and he was 1958 Mr. Oregon. His training partner was Bill Pearl way back in the day, and so his name is Cecil Phillips, and when he passed away, I couldn't think of a better name to put on a show than his own. The promoters I spoke about before, Kevin and Linda James, were the big push for me to put on a show down here, since I was essentially bringing 10 to 20 athletes up to Seattle every year to compete naturally since I started. So, and they're like, hey, why don't we try an Oregon show? There's no drug tested Oregon shows. Why don't we give it a try? So we've been putting it on every year since.
Sweet.
Yeah.
All right. let's go to this year's event. You've got
Yes.
some cool people coming in. Talk to us about plans for the show, who's showing up, all that good stuff.
All right. So last year, Kevin and Linda, they put on their their 18th annual Washington State Natural, and they have retired. And since then, they moved to Iowa. They informed me that because of the retirement, they wanted to know if I wanted to continue the legacy of their show, the Washington State Natural. And while it's a bit of a commute for me to do so, I said, you know what? I'd rather put the show on, or at least try to live up to your guys' honor and name, than to let it just go to the wayside. So, get over this last year, we've been promoting the heck out of it. We kind of rebranded it in a way to modernize it. A lot of what they did, was like they started in 2005, and they kind of rinsed and repeated what worked at that time, but it's different era these days, if you will. So updated the registration form, updated the image, likeness. We have been broadcasting with all those athletes that I know from the Washington area since, and because this show is a pro-am, and because it is only 5 weeks prior to WNBF Worlds, which is also in Seattle, we have a lot of people going to this show as a pro qualifier for either the amateur or the professional ranks for Worlds. And that makes it to where it's kind of a prelim, if you will, before the big game. And this show, habitually has 80 to 120 athletes. Anyway, our goal is to try and boost that up each year, along with the attendees, the sponsors, the accolades. I'm a big fan of putting on a show that is extremely entertaining. That's my goal every time we put on a show down here, is to bring the United States Marine Corps in to march the colors out, to have a live national anthem. We throw a lot of free gear out into the audience, and I want to make sure that's pretty uniform between my events.
Sweet. Yeah, that actually works out really well for you this year with where Worlds is.
Yeah, it's really fortunate that we'll be kind of having all these events in the Northwest. I think there's 11 or 12 natural bodybuilding shows this year in the Northwest, and it's a ending point with WNBF Worlds, and it's sparked a lot of interest, not only nationally but internationally. The Washington State Natural, being in Seattle, is a big international hub, and it's really easy to get to for most countries. So we've had athletes from China and Southeast Asia. We've had athletes from Australia. We've had athletes from Europe come in and compete at this event many times in the years past, and this one will be no different.
Sweet. Now, you mentioned before we come on some 3DMJ boys coming to have some fun.
Yeah, so we have Jeff Alberts, who has shown some interest in coming up. He's competed at the show before many years ago. Good friends with the promoters and the Northwest scene. We all have, all the respect and love in the world. And with my understanding, this will be his final year, his 30th year of natural bodybuilding, and he'd like to
3 decades. That's insane.
That's so impressive. Yeah. And that's a testament to national bodybuilding and, how amazing the athletes are in this sport. So he was looking to also do the Washington State Natural as a prelim to the Worlds. And then because of such, I believe he sparked interest for Eric Helms to do the same. And so Eric, since he has not won his WNBF Pro card, but we all know he's knocking on the door to do so, we are, both a pro-am. So if he has his pro card prior, he'll be doing some shows prior. He could compete as a pro, or he will compete as an amateur going for his pro card.
Now, I was at a WNBF Canada event last year. Is the pros before or after? And if it's after, can the amateur winners jump in?
Yeah, so I try to prioritize our pros. I'm a big fan of making sure that our professionals are well taken care of. So I've had this discussion with other promoters. I've had this discussion with our vice president and president of our federation. It is up to the promoter discretion on how we order the event. In years past, we've had shows where we have put the pros very end, but we want feedback from them. What would you like to see? You are our guys. You are our representatives, our ladies who are phenomenal. And the overwhelming consensus was that they'd like to be prioritized and go first. So we are pros first thing in the morning. Our show starts at 9:30 a.m. It's about a 2-hour show for our 4 pro classes, about a half hour per class, a lot of stage time. And then we do our awards there. And then we start with our amateurs thereafter. So our amateurs not be able to compete against the pros that day. But, again, we'll get feedback from the attendees, the competitors, and if they want to switch that up, I'm more than happy to provide it.
Yeah, definitely pros and cons to it, right? I think that was some of the comments at the show I was at too, was that like, it would have been a little bit more preferred to be on in the morning. And especially it was a very big show. So I don't think the pros got on till like 7 p.m. Right. So that makes for a very long day. So very, rightfully with that opinion, right?
I'm a fan too, as a pro myself, I'd rather get it done with and compete, eat some food, watch the rest of the show, support the amateurs. I'm a fan of that, but I could be biased because I get pretty hungry by the time it's showtime.
For sure. Let's, is there anything else show wise you want to mention before we move on?
Yeah, so we have a lot of great promoters coming out to support the show, and also we have a lot of participants that are coming in and supporting the show for sponsorship. So we have Robert Ryan Sykes, who runs the Keto Brick Company, coming in providing that formula, that company stuff for a booth expo there. We have some local gyms coming in, supplement shops, clothing companies coming in. Our goal is to try and get as many people who are involved in natural bodybuilding as possible. So anyone watching this, anyone wants to reach out who'd like to go to the show and participate, if they want to do a sponsorship, we do provide VIP tickets for our sponsors. So, front row passes. They also will have advertisements on our media, our poster design, our flyers. They're really prioritized. So if anybody watching this would like to, build it up with us, that'd be great.
Sweet. Yeah, no, for sure. Definitely check it out, because obviously you being behind it, you're passionate about the sport, you support the sport. So anybody that's going to get involved is going to get some good publicity, and it sounds like be involved with a pretty good show.
Yes, yeah, we want to stock the goodie bags for all the competitors as full as possible. Make sure they're taken. I think you and I both know, if you've done a lot of shows, every show can be a little different, but things you can get away from the show, from being taken care of, prioritized, well communicated with, some freebies, goodies, and great awards. So that's what we stand for.
Yeah. What do you like to do for overall trophies and stuff like that? Do you get crazy with it, or?
For our show down here, we've always provided a pretty big sword for the winners. Girls. I'm a fan of kind of having a tier structure of awards. So 4th and 5th place are medals with the show logo on them. 3rd place is a relief trophy from Niels Anderson. 2nd and 1st are larger Niels Anderson sculptures. All of our bikini and figure competitors get tiaras. All of our athletes who are winning overalls get swords here, but we're thinking about doing something a little more fun up there at the Washington State National. Since Kevin and Linda James have always been into kind of a dragon sub theme, we're looking at getting like some dragon style swords that are really unique and cool for separate the show differences. And then we do have a team award, we have a transformation award, and we have a most inspirational award for that show as well.
Sweet. Yeah, that stuff really makes a difference. Yeah, it really does.
I think so. We really like our coaches and decide to make the commute, bring a bunch of athletes in. We want them recognized, and we kind of decide that based on both quantity of competitors and placings, because sometimes pretty close. We want to make sure we're looking, how did those athletes do and how many there were. One thing that makes the Washington State National different as well is that they have a transformation award for people who maybe aren't quite super competitive in the realms of trying to get a pro card, but they've made a huge change in their lifestyle. Maybe they lost like 70 pounds or 100 pounds. We do have categories for that, and we have a lot of participants every year. So we want to recognize those people who are like, you know what, I'm not quite ready to try and compete for that pro card, but I'd like to be recognized for the endeavors this last year.
Yeah, that's the thing about this sport, is you're going to have people on stage from all different spectrums and coming from all different backgrounds, right? You're going to have those athletes that are up there in the 1st, 2nd, 3rd placings, but maybe the person that comes 6th lost 60 pounds to get there. So that in itself is a totally different kind of win, right?
I totally agree. And sometimes you don't know it. I stand next to somebody who's down and they've done it for 2 or 3 years to get there. Maybe you had 15 or 20 to go. When you find that out, I mean, it's even more inspiring that they've changed not only their physique, their life around to get on that stage. Sometimes, at least I would have never got in the shape I'm in or had a desire to do so if shows didn't exist.
Yeah. Were you always into training and stuff growing, like when you were younger? Were you always in sports and everything?
My sports were pretty alternative. I think I was kind of bounced around high schools where I didn't really get on, varsity teams or anything, smaller high schools, rural ones. And actually, I picked up playing footbag or hacky sack as my sport. And I did that through the Marine Corps in my senior year in high school. And so very foot based because I did soccer in like middle school. And then I competed at the United States Championships and World Championships for that sport after the Marine Corps. Yeah, and then I realized that I couldn't necessarily do my leg days in the gym and that sport. I kind of had to pick my direction thereafter. So that was the only sport I really was into at a higher level. But I always enjoyed instructing and helping others. I thought I was going to be a physical education instructor for like high school. That was my original goal when I joined the Marine Corps. And I found out that, you know what, if I'm training my team or my squad in the infantry, I enjoyed a smaller group setting more than a larger one. So I got into training and coaching small groups instead.
You've perked my attention a little bit. What does hacky sack training look like? Can you talk about that a bit?
Sure. So hacky sack is a brand name like Kleenex and tissues, but the sport itself is footbag. So that was one I learned when I was in high school. And there's a trick-based system. So let's say you stall the bag and then you lift it up. That's a 1 point or one ad, they call it. And every dexterity or trick you do on top of that is an additional ad. So if you, let's say, raise the bag up and it's called around the world, put your leg around and catch it again. That's a 2 ad because you did a move and a catch. So the skill set I got up to was a 7 ad, which means that you could do, multiple dexterity spins and ducks and then catch the bag again. And that's what won me the best trick in the United States in 2008 because I was able to perform that on stage in Portland, Oregon. And then I went to the World Championships and I got completely destroyed. So, so that was. Yeah, super crazy. But that was my sport growing up. I loved it because it was something you could do on your own. Just practiced a lot, trained a lot, and then there's different forms of competition, like best trick, best 3 tricks, best run, best 30 seconds, or just best presentation and routine, which usually derived the best athlete for the shows.
How did you fall into that?
I think because I wasn't doing any formal sports and I'm pretty competitive by nature, and I was into soccer after middle school, that it started with just kicking the bag as many times as possible. And then since this area was the starting point of footbag in the 19th,
okay,
there was
you're in the hub of it.
Yeah, exactly. There was a DVD, or maybe back then it was VHS video floating around, and my mom brought it home. She was a teacher, and she said, "Hey, check out this cool video for hacky sack." And it showed all the basic tricks. And I was like, "This is crazy." So I learned every trick on there, and then I went to school, and people were blown away. And then that guy released another one, which was way more intense, and I was like, "Oh my gosh!" So that's what I started following, and then I joined the Marine Corps. So kind of had to find balance there, but in the Marine Corps there was some really, really good players down in California, and I got to play with them on the weekend.
That's cool.
Yeah, a little
Really
different, cool. Alternative, like I said.
What's what's competition like? Do you have is it individual? You just go on, do your presentation, and then they judge it, and then the next person goes, or is it 1v1? How's this all go down?
Yeah, they have all those variations. There was one called Circle Contest where you got past the bag and then you had your best run possible, but they tried to dictate what moves you did. Where it was okay, you got to do a unique trick. I mean, you couldn't repeat a trick twice or the run's over. So you have to use your brain a lot while doing juggling, but just with your feet. And that was one way of doing it. Another one was called the challenge round, where you did a move that they wrote on a big whiteboard. And then there'd be 30 people and everybody tried to do that move. And whoever dropped it was out. And then they just kind of one up the move every round to a more
nation.
Yeah, exactly. So that was another variation. And then there's just routine, which is like bodybuilding, very subjective. They kind of look at your song, if it's choreographed to the song, the difficulty of the tricks, the length of the run, how many times you drop the bag. That would usually be the one that dictated the winner, simply because the best players in the world could do essentially anything choreographed to music.
Well, shit. This is the coolest thing I've learned all day. What about you, Dan?
Yeah, I didn't know it was so organized.
Very much so. I don't know these days. I've kind of fallen out of the sport since I've gotten into bodybuilding, but Europe is still a prominent scene these days.
Have you seen that? It's like Ninja Tag, where they have like an arena almost with just a bunch of monkey bars everywhere, and these 1v1 run around trying to play tag with each other, and you're trying to like hardcore tag, maybe I think it's what it's called, but that stuff's nuts.
That is awesome. Yeah, I'm all about it. Anything cool like that has a lot of insight and viewership, and hey, if it gets up to like the Olympics or something, power to them.
It reminds me how like stiff and immobile I am as a bodybuilder.
Building life.
So where are you now in your training career?
Well, as a WNBF Pro and a promoter, my goal always is, like you yourself, is try to exceed my previous best. Try to develop more lean tissue and slow and steady. I am looking to maybe compete this year. The difficulty is finding the balance between promoting shows and competing. We have Leo up in Canada, who I really look up to in this regard, because he's seemingly being able to promote a show and compete simultaneously. And this is something I want to learn, because I put a lot of brain power and effort and time and sacrifice into putting the show on. It's really important to me to make it seamless, smooth, well ran, and I want to be brain dead while doing that. So when I get really lean, I don't want to kind of share my focus, and that's one thing this year will be interesting. So just that kind of dieting slowly, maybe pick a show here and there that I can balance with the show prep as well.
Yeah. What do you body weight wise typically compete at?
I competed last in 2021 at a few shows, and I was 183 upon waking for each of those shows, and I'm about 5.5. So I think my first show I ever competed in was like 171 in 2008. So I don't know, 12 pounds of lean tissue over, I don't know, quite a few years.
What was your height again?
5.
Wow, that's jacked.
Say so.
Think about it. I'm so used to guys who weigh more than I do. It's the best I've done thus far, but hopefully it can be like 184, 185 this year. That would be great. And
I saw some footage of you and Eddie.
Yes. Yeah, we competed in 2021. It was just us two at Washington State Natural. And, that show for me, I never got to win a class. I always got second at that show. And I was like, I'm going to do it this year. And then when I took it over, I'm like, well, now I can't compete at. So I gotta keep that in the memory bank. That always second. Yeah, Eddie's a fantastic athlete. And I gave him a big shout out to that show, because without knowing that I was going to go up against him, because I knew he was going to do it, I don't know if I would have pushed as hard in the gym. And hats off to that guy. He is a testament to natural bodybuilding for youth and age, and he has such a long-term mindset, very patient.
Yeah. So what do you, as far as a competitor goes, do you have any bucket list things left to do on the career list, or is it just continue doing the thing, or what?
Yeah.
What's that look like for you?
Yeah, I'd like to win a pro show. I'd like to compete at Worlds one day. Those are kind of the next things for stepping stones for natural bodybuilding. Other than that, I can't really think outside. That's kind of one thing at a time. I think my original goal was, win a novice class, and I was win an open class, and I was win an overall, and I was win a pro card. So I've knocked out all those things. I did win a NPC untested overall as well one year. So that felt good, and that was kind of on the bucket list. And then now it's okay. Let's win a WNBF Pro show. And then, if I can do that, then I feel like I would want to do Worlds. But for me, I'm very precise on one step at a time. For me, like Worlds is like, whew, that's the big time. Those are all pro winners. If you can't win a pro show, at least for me, I don't think I'm ready to stand up there yet.
Yeah. It's funny how I think the longer you do this, the more you compete, the more your mindset matures about that kind of stuff. But it's funny when, even if I have clients and stuff like that, they're like, do you think I could turn pro? And it's like, man, you haven't competed yet, or you haven't won a class or won an overall. Like, there's a lot of prerequisites before that should even cross your mind, right? So it's good to hear a competitor that's been around as long as you have kind of reiterate that, you're still you're at a level in this sport, and you're still thinking Worlds is so far away from where you are, right?
Correct. Yes. I don't want to spend the time, effort, and money and, have that first time experience for me to not, be competitive on that stage. And I think I know which class I'd end up in for the weight class breaks. Because I don't think I'm ever going to get up to that 198 or whatever it is for that break and that cutoff. So, be in the middleweight class. If you were there last year, I was at WNBF Worlds, fantastic physiques, unbelievable, like shape, symmetry, conditioning, presentation, and they make them work. That's one thing about the WNBF is you're not just walking on stage for a minute or two. You're up there for 20, 30 minutes, and you can't wear out. So you got to be conditioned, but you also got to be, large and in charge enough to be known.
Was it? It was Fabian, the middleweight last year.
Right. He looked incredible. Yeah,
he was nuts.
He was. I think pretty clear cut. He'd be that number one guy, and then everybody was fighting for second.
Yeah. Oh man, it's crazy that there's just levels to it. You see when you're starting out, you see the starting levels, and then you work up, and you see the middle ranks, and then the upper tier, and then you see guys that are winning world titles and pro shows, and you're like, holy frig, this is it just goes on and on forever.
And that's what's great. I think that allows us to kind of look at the long-term goal in the sport. And obviously we have our genetic freaks and our outliers who show up and they're a few years in. And it's like, you look like you've been out for 20 years. And more power to those people. But for the majority of us, it's going to take, some slow, steady gains and proper outlooks as, stepping stones, one thing at a time. I do think that, our sport, unlike many, we can do this for, like Jeff Albert's sake, 30 years and continue progressions. Anybody's like, his age in the 50s and the physique he has.
It's impressive.
And you can't really say that about a lot of sports.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Sweet. Awesome, man. Well, I appreciate you coming on. I'm glad we can finally set this up.
Absolutely. Thank you guys. I hope we can, either see you guys or give you a shout out. The Washington State National this year, October 14th, and that'll be in Seattle, Washington, 5 weeks prior to the Auburn, Washington World Championships, which will be a 2-day show this year, the 19th and 20th. Amateurs on one day, pros on the other. We'd love to have people come out and support the show. Lots of good natural bodybuilding happening this year in the Northwest. Last thing is just, if you want to look at our Northwest show schedule, inbfnorthwest.com will have all the information you need.
What's the Instagram handle as well?
My Instagram handle is Genuine Fitness Training, but if you want to check out the show, Washington State Natural would be the show IG.
There you go, people. You heard it right there. If you guys want to get involved, you know where to find them. And thank you, man, for coming on. We really appreciate it. If you guys enjoyed this episode with Aaron, let us know, and we'll get him on for episode 2 in the future. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you guys in the next one.